Hello, everybody. I am beyond excited about today, and I was telling Aliza, I think more than any other week, I am a student today because I find this topic very complicated, very I don't know. It has so many feelings and emotions when we talk about forgiveness. What does forgiveness really mean? How do we forgive people? We tell so often, we tell people, if you forgive, it's a gift for yourself, but it doesn't come with a little booklet teaching us how to do it. Feelings are so strong, they're so deeply rooted. Things happen to us. Hi, Naomi. So happy to see you here. Things happen, and sometimes they stay with us for years and years. How do you let it go? So, first of all, I want to remind all of you that this is the second part of a 10-part series which we're doing in the memory of Miriam Amsalem, a friend of mine who passed away about a week and a half ago. She, I like to say that she departed obviously that's not true, right? She on time, just on time. But for us that stayed behind, we feel that it was before her time because she was young. But everything that happens in the right time. So this is the book Heal with Gold, 10 Golden Nuggets to Heal Your Mind and Soul. Today we're going to be talking about forgiveness. And before I bring Aliza, who is a mentor, somebody who I admire, who I learn from in every conversation, who inspires me, probably the top two women in the world that inspire me and motivate me is Aliza, who's speaking this week, and Fally, who's speaking next week. So you have a treat. I want to start, before I bring Aliza, to just read a few sentences of my book, because you'll understand why I needed to bring somebody of Aliza's caliber to talk about forgiveness. So it's Golden Nugget number 7 on page 141. It goes like that. This may shock you, but I believe the word forgiveness is misused and overused, and at times it really upsets me. When people say forgive is the biggest gift you give yourself, could it be that we're potentially bullying a victim to do something that they're not able to do? I think of women who were gang raped like Madeline. She was raped by 3 men at the age of 11. I think of women who were verbally, emotionally, physically, and sexually abused by their spouses or suitors, like Jacqueline, who was abused by her military boyfriend. What about those who lost someone in an accident because of a drunk driver? Ellie Levin, whom I brought here in the group, his brother who was engaged with his fiance, this is exactly what happened to them. Should they forgive the assailant? I often think of people who survived the terror attack. I know that I cannot comprehend the degree of their pain and suffering. How could I tell another person who was victimized to forgive? Now, obviously, we weren't all victimized in such degrees. And this is why I'm bringing Aliza, and we have a lot of questions, and you will be able to ask yours at the end. Help me to welcome Aliza Bulow.
Hi.
My dear, welcome back to the Heal with Gold show.
It is so nice to be here with you.
It is so wonderful. It is. I want to tell everybody, first of all, guys, tell me who is here. Write your names because I cannot see you. I just know that you're here, but I cannot see your names unless you say hi to us. Just to let everybody know that a bunch of years ago, probably about 10 or 9, I heard about Aliza. I then consumed everything that she had on her website. I listened to every show, every video, I read every blog, and I told my husband, I have to have her here in Boca Raton. I have to invite her. And I reached out and I invited, and I had the pleasure of having Aliza in my house from Thursday to Sunday when she spoke in 8 locations. during that weekend, 8 times. Now that I'm more involved with public speaking, I have no idea how she had the stamina to do all of that. All the while, in between, she was making bracelets, and she gifted me a beautiful one that I wear till today. And we had the best time. And I think we automatically became intertwined, our souls. And here you are today, 9, 10 years later.
So true. I forgot. That's where I made my Shabbos bracelet. It was in your house.
That's right. That's exactly it. Aliza, I brought you to speak probably on the toughest subject in my book because I find it forgiveness complicated, very complicated. And I think that if we could have a handbook that explains and walks us through the process of forgiveness, and if we all focused just on forgiveness, our lives, the quality of our lives would be completely different because so much of our pain and suffering is that resentment that we hold to people that wronged us. And it could be horrible things like I read on this chapter, in this beginning of this chapter, but it could be just something small. Somebody wronged you at the airport, your suitcase got lost or whatever, somebody cut a line. The gamut, right? But our day, we're all the time interacting with people. Our entire life is about how we interact with one another. And yet we never learned what it means and how to deal with emotions, words, and actions by other people, how we perceive them, how we make sense of it, and then how we let go without holding a grudge, without keeping that pain. So take it from here. I mean, I'll start with questions, and everybody, if you have a question, type question, put the question. When it comes the right moment, we will bring it up for Aliza to answer.
Okay, so forgiveness is something that I've worked on pretty hard, actually, over the last, I don't even know how long. And it's a continual process to work on ideas of forgiveness. So probably about 10 years ago, Sarah Yocheved Rigler came to Denver. Maybe it was even a little bit more. It was during a serious time during an Iran nuclear crisis when the Israelis were feeling very threatened by nuclear bombs from Iran. And she spoke and she asked us all to please generate some merit for the safety of the Jews in Israel by choosing somebody to forgive. So I wanted to do that. I just felt like here I am living in Denver, Colorado. How will I help protect my brethren so far away in the Holy Land? I need to do something in the spiritual realms that will make a difference. And I knew that forgiveness would. And so I chose the person who was the most difficult in my life at the time. I won't say who, but a significant adult in my family structure. And I forgave them for everything they had done before and for everything they would do in the future. Because I knew that person wasn't changing. I knew that person was going to continue to disrespect my decisions and to take lightly my accomplishments and to look down on me and to condescend and to second guess and to do it again and again and again, as they had for a long time and as they would going into the future. And I chose in that moment to forgive behind and forward that person forever as a merit to protect the Jews in Israel. So then I had to work with it the next time that person said something because I had forgiven in the past and I made a commitment to forgive them in the future. And I was like, wow, okay, this is one of the things I'm forgiving. I forgave it already. Like it's just done. I don't have to be engaged with this because I already forgave it. Like I pre-forgave this comment and I pre-forgave this action. So how did I do that? I had to really work on understanding that it wasn't about me. It was about her. It was about her attitudes and her life, the way she speaks, the way she sees. And it really wasn't about me at all. I received the language and the behavior, but it actually had nothing to do with me. And I did not have to take offense. And taking offense was my choice. Her words were not my choice. But taking offense was my choice. And that was a big eye-opening moment for me to realize that taking offense is a choice, and I choose not. I choose not. I'm in charge of that. Now, we're not always in charge of that, but we can be in charge of if we take offense or not.
Yes, but you're talking about an emotion.
Yeah.
Emotions oftentimes are impulsive behaviors that happen because we have repeated patterns, right? When somebody brings us something nice, right? If your spouse makes you a cup of coffee without you even asking, you feel like, oh, that's so sweet, right? So it's an impulse that you are sweet and you're hugging and you're loving. But if people insult you, automatically you go on the defensive, right? And you're protecting. We are born with these almost this part of fight or flight. If somebody's threatening you, your position, what you're doing, immediately the instinct is to protect yourself.
Great. Okay, so what makes us human?
What makes us human?
One of the things that makes us human is our ability. We have instincts. We're animals.
Mm-hmm.
But we're not just animals, we're humans. One of the things that makes us human is our ability to transcend instinct. So if I walk into your house and I see $100 bill on the table and you're in the kitchen, I might say, I want that $100 bill. And she would never know if I put it in my pocket. But then, so my instinct is take, right? But transcending that is absolutely not. I'm not a person that steals. I'm honest. And so therefore I will leave that $100 bill right there, even if she'll never, never, ever know, right? Maybe you can make it a different kind of a story, but we can transcend instinct. So the question is, how do we do that in this case? And I do have some tools to work on that. And it pays to work on the smaller things to build the skill, because it really is a skill to be able to transcend that instinct, because it is automatic until it's not, until you interrupt the automatic cycle and realize, actually, it's my choice how I feel. I get to pick that.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I want to hear what are the techniques. You know that it's very interesting for those who know me since childhood. It's very interesting that the topic of forgiveness is hard for me, the topic, because forgiveness itself is not hard for me. I have a very easy time forgiving. I also have a very easy time getting upset. That is where I work on. I don't care. I don't hold a grudge because I choose joy every day. And for me, it was just second nature to be, okay, whatever, it happened. The part that I have to work hard on is not getting upset in the first place, right?
Mm-hmm.
To being able to see things from different perspectives and vantage points, choosing how I react the first moment.
Yeah.
But forgiveness was always something that I could let go. But I wanted to before you give us your tips on how to control instincts, I want to share something, because maybe when you were talking about the tips, you can touch on this. It was something very interesting that happened to me. And this happened in the community where I used to live. One thing that I guard very much is my relationship with my husband, and I'm very much a person that believes that the relationship of spouses needs to be protected by the spouses, right? And you don't let anybody come in between. And anybody who tries to come in between, I look at these people. I'm sorry, but I look down on them as saying, this is not right. You don't go and you try to create a fight between a couple. So I had a situation where somebody in the community spoke badly about me to my husband. Now, my husband, my husband is quiet. My husband, he forgives, he pre-forgives, and he doesn't answer, and he doesn't fight, he's just not who he is. He's very calm and quiet, and he was just listening, and he pretty much ignored what the person was saying, and he knew it wasn't true. But when I heard how the conversation transpired, I was extremely insulted by the person who spoke badly about me to my husband. Very insulted. Okay, so here what happens. That I wasn't present, right? My husband relayed to me what had happened, and I got upset. I got upset. How dare somebody go to one spouse and speak about the other spouse? But I decided to work on myself and forgive. Things weren't going well for my family, and I spoke to somebody about, and I was saying how so many things were difficult in my life. And that person told me, are you holding a grudge against somebody? Because that energy, that bad energy, is bringing you bad energy, bad things. So look through all the people that you know and think about somebody that you didn't forgive, and forgive them. Literally, I took my phone and I was going A, B, C through my entire list to see where is the person that when I see their name, something inside my heart is not going to sit straight. And I went through thousands of contacts, and I went a couple of times until one name, when it would scroll, it would go slower on my phone. The scrolling would kind of slow motion. Maybe I haven't really forgiven. So the reason I brought I worked on this person has been forgiven, but it took me a long time to really understand what it means to really forgive, like to really forgive. So please tell us your techniques.
So first, I have a little joke. It's a little story, and I just want to get to why we don't forgive. So I'm sure you've heard the story of the woman who goes to the rabbi and she says, "Rabbi, I don't know what to do. My husband thinks he's a chicken. He stays under the dining room table and he squawks and he pecks around the house, and I'm not sure what to do with him." And the rabbi says, "Well, did you try reasoning with him? Did you try telling him that he's not a chicken?" She said, "I would, except for we need the eggs." Okay. All right. So it could seem silly, but just a little while ago, a few months ago, I realized, oh my gosh, it's a brilliant parable, because eggs are useful. And sometimes there's something useful in the craziness, and we need what's useful so badly, we're not willing to give up the craziness. And so we have to find out, what are the eggs from our grudge? What are we holding that's worth it to us? Why is this grudge either delicious? Because sometimes it's delicious. We just love to ruminate over it and hold on to it. Or why are we doing it? What's the story? What are the eggs in the grudge? So there's a few. Let me just check my notes over here. I wrote, okay, so first of all, there's safety and familiarity. I am so used to being angry at this person, whether it's your mother-in-law, husband, neighbor, whatever it is. I'm just like, that is my go-to anger person. And I need a go-to anger person. Like, all my negative stuff can go there. I don't have to worry so much about my daughter and what she said if I could just be angry at this person. So there's safety and familiarity in holding a grudge against that person that's always saying stuff like that to you, always, right? So there's that. Then there's the distance, the ability to keep a distance from that person. No need to go close when they're so bad, right? Why should I have any compassion for that person? Do you see what they do? Right? So I don't have to even try to move myself at all. I could just condescend. Oh, condescending is amazing, because condescending means I am here and they are there, right? And so I can be taller than them when I condescend, which I could very easily do when they've done something absolutely wrong and it's so clear, right? Mm-hmm. So now I have certainty. I'm so clear that what they did is so wrong. There's no room for them to be right at all. And then there's absolution, not for them, but for me. I don't have to worry about my part in the story at all. Couldn't possibly be that I did something negative in the least when they're so bad and so wrong. So I'm completely absolved from my piece of the story or need to examine myself. So there's a lot of eggs in holding a grudge, a lot. And we have to be real with ourselves about what those eggs are. What's valuable to us? Some people might say, well, that's not valuable to me. I'm so mad at this person. I'm constantly thinking about it, ruminating all the time. And that is why we want to let go. All that ruminating, you know what that's like? It's like spinning strings around yourself. Every time you ruminate, it's another thread and another thread and another thread until you're caught in your own web of anger, right? Which brings to mind, and I looked up to see who said this, not clear who said this. Wasn't the Buddha, turns out. But whoever said this, that holding a grudge is like drinking poison and hoping the other person's going to die, right? So, and that's what we want. We think and we're angry and we ruminate and we're mad and we just hope that they're going to be hurt by this whole thing. But what we're doing is just spinning our own cocoon of entrapment in all this rumination and anger. And okay, so we do it to ourselves, which means we can undo it ourselves. We can. It's totally up to us. So, and you're right that the trick is to not feel it in the first place. We'll get there, but that's towards the end. But the release is the first thing. Because for those people who are trapped right now, how do you release, right? So the first thing to do is actually listen to something like this, think it through, learn more about forgiveness and its benefits. So let's first talk about what forgiveness is. Forgiveness doesn't actually mean saying it wasn't that person's fault. You don't have to realize that it's not their fault to forgive them. You just have to release them from the blame or release them from your ruminations in order to forgive them. So you don't have to have a conversation with them. A lot of people feel like if they don't ask me, if they don't say sorry, I can't forgive them. Right? So there's two ways to forgive. Among the ways to forgive, because I'm sure there's more than two, but two of them are unilateral and bilateral. So bilateral is where you have a conversation and they say, gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't realize what I did hurt you so much. Or I did realize what, and I'm really sorry now that I did that. I shouldn't have. I've grown. I'm a different person and I should never have done that. Please forgive me. And then you can say, yes, that's a bilateral process. A unilateral process is when you choose to do it on your own, which you can. So it's interesting. I learned this concept of unilateral and bilateral forgiveness from Rabbi David Foreman when he talked about God after the flood of Noah. So God first brings the flood to destroy the world because he's mad at the world and what people are doing. And then after the flood, you know what God says? I see people are evil from their youth and there's no fixing that. And so therefore I promise I'll never destroy the world again. What? He could have said that before the flood. Wait till after the flood. He first had to destroy and then come to the conclusion that people are. So that was a unilateral forgiveness. He said, you know what? I see who you are. And this is how you are. And so I'm pre-forgiving. I'm not going to destroy the world again. I'm not going to do it because I see that you've got this. You've got this thing. And I, God, have made space for you to have that thing. But it's not up to me. How we are actually is not even up to God. You know, our own inner working, God made space for that we get to pick how we feel about things and how we go about things. So that's up to us. Even God can't change that. So just because God made space, he could if he wanted to, but he chose not to, right? So, okay, fine. So now the benefits of forgiving are you get to stop ruminating all the time and you get to let go of the person and what they did to you, both. And that's really the ultimate benefit is if you let go, because if you don't, you're schlepping the person with you all the time, taking them to bed with you. When you at night are falling asleep and you're thinking about that person, why did they say that about my husband? Why did they say I said that about my husband? You're sleeping with that person's in bed with you and your husband. And in your brain as you're trying to dream, and in your prayers as you're trying to pray, and in your grocery list as you're trying to compose it. Why did that person say that thing? Right? They pop up all over the place, but not because they're there. It's not what they did. It's us that allows them all that room, and we can take that room away. So, and we can't take it away by squeezing them out of it. We take it away by unhooking ourselves from them. And that can only be done by forgiving. So, and again, the forgiving is not taking away the blame. You don't have to say, that person didn't mean what they said. wasn't as bad as what they did. It's not as bad as I made it out. It doesn't have to be any of that. It just has to be, you know what? Here's what the sentence that was very helpful for me. You don't have to absolve them at all. You can just say, that person is much bigger than that act. That person's life is much bigger than what they did to me, even if it was really bad. But for sure, if it was only medium bad, right? They took my parking space when I had an appointment I needed to get into right then. And I lost the job because I was late to the job interview. Okay, they did something bad. But in the scope of things, like, they're bigger than that. Meaning, not that they're bigger and more gracious and kind that they would have given me the space. They do other things, other good things and other bad things. Their whole life trajectory is so much bigger than the parking space that they stole from me, or the money they stole from me, or the boyfriend they stole from me, or the peace of mind that I'm giving them. I don't have to give that to them. There's so much more to that person than that.
So you humanize them.
I humanize them. I normalize the fact that they're bigger than that. But you know who's also bigger than that? Me.
Mhm.
I'm bigger than that lost parking space. And I am bigger than that lost job. And I am bigger than that breakup of the relationship. My life trajectory is much, much bigger and richer than anything any one person could do to me or against me. There's nothing actually that somebody could do to me that could, I mean, somebody could murder me. Okay, fine, that would ruin my whole life, right? But but I wouldn't know because I'd be dead. So humor helps. But the point is, we can expand them or we can expand us and know that we're bigger than that. We're bigger than that event. And I don't have to spend my life ruminating about that event, even if it was really bad. I can release it. So we might, on our way to forgiveness, choose to use the word release and say, I want to release this person. The way to release is going to be to forgive. But at first, it might be too hard to say, I want to forgive this person, especially if it's really like whatever. They did something. It's very hard to forgive. You feel like you are justified in holding a grudge against them. Right. So, okay, but I want to release them. I don't want them popping up in my life anymore. I don't want to sleep with them anymore. I don't want to schlep them around in my car, in my mailbox, in my grocery list. I don't want them in my life anymore. So I need to release them. And I have to do something to get there. So that is a forgiveness process that needs to be worked on. There's different ways to forgive. For me, I start with that story with forgiving as a merit. Just think about for a minute going through your closet. When you go through your closet to get rid of clothes that, whatever it is, it's too small. Maybe clothes shrink in closets like crazy. You hang them up and just a few weeks later, they are smaller. I don't know what closets do to clothes. But let's just say you happen to be going through those clothes and it's hard to let go of something you really like.
Mhm.
But if you're giving it to a friend, it's much easier. Hey, take this. I loved wearing this. It'll look fabulous on you. Or even if you're giving it to charity, if you're giving it to a resale shop that will sell it and make a few dollars for whatever it is, handicapped people, great. It's much easier than putting it in the garbage. Right? It's easier to release it when there's something meaningful. So it might be easier to release that grudge when there's something meaningful, right? To say either I want to generate a merit to protect my family. I want to generate a merit to protect whatever, people that I care about. I want to generate a merit for my own health, right? I'm having whatever heart trouble, right? And I want to release the extra work that my heart is doing. I'm going to release that because I don't have to do that extra work and carry that extra pain for my own health. I'm releasing this person for my own. It's not for their health. It's for my health, right? I release, and therefore I forgive. In order to release them fully, I need to just open up my hands and let it go. So sometimes I actually physically do this. Sometimes I open my hands to release it. And sometimes I'll take it and like a bird and cast it up to the heavens and just say, Hashem, you catch this. God, you catch this. But the physical release can be helpful to open your hands to release it. Because sometimes we do feel our hands like when we're clenching as we think about that person, right? And to release in the jaws, right? Release in our breathing, release in our hands, and release it. But that is a process of forgiveness. Start with the release and realize it's all up to me. It has nothing to do with them.
Okay, and you know that any new habit that we want to take on, any new behavior takes practice, takes consistency, continuous, right? I think what happened in that story that I shared was that I said I forgave and I worked on forgiving him, but I didn't keep checking to see how do I feel. Like I didn't have a checks and balances.
Mm-hmm.
After a certain amount of time, I learned not to think about that person. I learned to not bring him to bed with us. But when his name appeared, I was like guarded.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was that whole situation was interesting to me because I realized that the forgiveness was not a complete
Right.
forgiveness. It was, I did it just enough for me to sleep better, but deep down in a much deeper part of my soul, I had not forgiven.
Right. So you're right. We do have to work on it again and again, and it comes in layers. And sometimes we don't even realize all the layers that are there. And so we do have to release. And you're right, it might be hidden, like in your case, where you're just not sure. And I guess it could pay to recheck and say, this I've thought about this a few years ago, and I re-release. Like I'm more advanced now than I was then. Probably he is too. Probably. And I release it completely. I don't need to hold it against him. I don't even know how he would be. So here is a way to think about forgiveness too. And this really comes, it's interesting, from the end of the book of Jonah, also a biblical story, where Jonah's pretty mad at God. He can't believe that the town of Nineveh was not destroyed. I mean, here he was sent as a prophet of God to tell the town of Nineveh that they're going to be destroyed, and they weren't in the end. And Jonah was so mad at God, he wanted to die. And he tells God, kill me now. I'm so mad. And God says, really? How about this? How about I'll grow a big leaf over your head and it won't be so hot? And Jonah's like, oh, that's a relief. And then God kills the leaf. And Jonah says, now kill me. God says, what? For a leaf, you feel compassion, but for all these people and their animals, you don't? And that's the end of the book of Jonah. That's it. That's how God just asked that question like that. There's a bunch of people and a bunch of animals. So people and animals, what's the difference between them? People have self-awareness and can grow emotionally, and animals cannot. Whatever's in an animal is in it, right? They just have instinct. They can't transcend it. A dog will be faithful, not because he says, I value my life, but I'll transcend that to protect my owner. That's their instinct, to protect the owner and put themselves in harm's way to protect. But that's their instinct. We would have to think twice, about something like that. So anyway, so human beings can grow. So we could forgive because we could say about the human being, there's so much potential there. They could really be more than that. I'm going to forgive based on their potential and based on their tomorrow, where they could go. I forgive. Or like an animal, so this could be a human being who is limited or dead, right? So sometimes we haven't forgiven people in the grave. There's no potential, none. They're dead, right? They're never going to say sorry or be nice, ever. But we can say, you know what? That's just how they are. And why should I hold a grudge against that? They did whatever they could with the tools they had, and the tools they had just weren't enough to live a nice life of kindness. They didn't have it. And how sad is that? That they just had to live like that. So on the one hand, that's a little bit condescending, but it's compassionate. It's compassionate. Okay, I want to tell you a technique. It's called restorying. And for this, we need another short story. Imagine you are marooned on a deserted island. Except on this island are hungry, man-eating monsters. And it's just you with no weapons, no place to go, and no place to hide. What should you do? Stop imagining. Okay, so the whole problem that you were in was in your imagination. And a lot of the grudges that we hold are because of what we imagined, not because of what really happened. It's the story we told ourselves about what happened. So for this, let me just tell you different stories about a poor dead dog, right? It could be a dead child or friend, but let's just think about it. It's easier to think about a dead dog. Why did this dog die? It was hit by a car. It was hit by a car, so that's sad. The dog is dead, right? Now, the person driving the car was texting and not even paying attention. That makes you really angry, right? Okay. The person driving the car was taking their wife, who was in labor, to the hospital and was so nervous. Okay, that makes you feel like, oh, that's so sad, right? The person driving the car hates dogs and aimed at the dog. The person driving the car was in the middle of an epileptic fit. They shouldn't have taken the car in the first place. Okay, you're mad at them for taking the car when they shouldn't have, but they had a fit, right? So there's all different stories. The dog is still dead, but you feel differently depending on the story. The story makes a lot of difference.
So I'm smiling because I have a whole chapter devoted on perspectives and vantage points. Is once you move, you change the story, the positioning, the view of what happened. You see something completely different, and you're able to retell a different story and move on from there. 100%.
Right.
I mean,
It's so vital, and it's a very important tool for forgiveness. Because if we realize most of our problem is our imagination of the story. Now, let's just say you don't really know what the story was, but you still get to imagine it.
Yeah.
Make a choice about how you imagine it, right? You walk into a crowded room, you see somebody, and she looks right through you. You never went over to her. You have no clue. And you're thinking, she thinks she's all that in a bag of chips. She doesn't have to come over and say hi. She never doesn't have to acknowledge me, whatever, right? And you could think to yourself, because you don't know, she probably didn't even notice me. She was busy in the middle of a conversation. Maybe she was distracted with something. Who knows what it was? But it's totally up to us, the story we tell ourselves about that, right? So we get to imagine things. That's up to us. Whether it's giving somebody the benefit of the doubt, right, which is an important quality to have, but that the Chavetz Chaim, I believe, one of our rabbis of the last century, said that the reason that we have imagination is to make up stories, to make up good stories, because it's up to us, the story that we tell. Now, sometimes the story that we tell is a true story, but we can tell it in different ways. I'm going to give you a true life example of two different stories. Okay, so, I wrote this out so I could restory it because they're both true and see how different it feels. My mother was so busy with her community goals and personal emotional process that she could not see my emotional needs or even tend to my physical safety when she knew what was happening in my schools as a little girl. Okay, so how does that make you feel? Anger, victim, resentment, judgmental. She was so busy. She couldn't even see what was happening. She did not take care of me or protect me. Here's restoring it. My mother lost her mother shortly after I was born, and then her father died just 2 years later, shortly after my sister was born. She was 26 with a toddler and a baby and 2 dead parents. Lost in her emotional chaos and feeling distant from the God that took her parents, she committed to social activism as a way to find order, purpose, and meaning in the world. She was so busy trying to hold herself and her marriage together that she was unable to see the emotional and sometimes even the physical needs of her little children. How does that story feel? Compassion, release. The same little girl wasn't cared for, but it feels so different. So different. If the little girl, big girl, can see something different and tell a different story, because you could be stuck in, she didn't protect me. Or you could release it and say, She was struggling so much with what was going on inside her that she couldn't even see it. So yes, whatever happened, happened. But maybe I'm not the victim, and maybe I don't have to blame her. Doesn't mean I say I was safe as a child. It just means I'm no longer the victim of her inability to see what was going on. I don't have to be so angry like that. I could feel compassion. It's the same things happened, but it's a different way of telling the story.
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important to examine the stories that we're telling, because the stories we tell ourselves are our choice. So when we say it's an automatic feeling to become angry, well, that's where we work, is on the stories we tell ourselves. Because it's the story we tell ourselves. And we tell it again and again. Here she is, not paying attention again, lost in her own self and her own emotional process, right? So you could say that, or here she's led a life of trying to figure things out and be strong on her own, and she wasn't ever able to fully bring that into, bring her daughters into the process, or whatever she did was able to bring in, that was great, whatever it is. But it's a different story, and it's a story where there's a lot more room for not being the victim, having compassion for another, and not having to go to bed with it on a regular basis. So, and we can make things up. That could be that there's true pieces to add into the story, and it could be that we can make stuff up if we don't know, if the person's dead, if we can't ask them, if they won't have the conversation with us. It's up to us to make a story that works for us to be able to release them from the stranglehold we're letting them have.
Mm-hmm.
Because the stranglehold is ours, and we can release it because we're the one who made it, not them.
Yeah. I want to tell you, to share a technique that I use too. And this is something that I 100% learned from my husband, who doesn't hold a grudge to anyone. Like he doesn't see, and this is the technique. He explained to me that he doesn't see anything that happens to him through somebody as that somebody caused him those feelings. He feels that we're all here with their ability to choose to behave in kindness or in of hurting other people. This is a choice that we have. So we're responsible for making the choice. If we're good or if we're bad, it's up to us. But nothing will happen to us that is not something that's building us, that it is either a test or a challenge or an opportunity for our growth. So what I experience is in a way not connected so much to who make it, because that person chose to be mean. But what I had to go through is not necessary. If it wouldn't come from this person, it would come from that person, it would come from the other person. The challenge itself, or the pain, or the suffering, or the hardship, the adversity, I would have to go through, because it's a challenge that I need to go through my life in order for me to grow and become a more complex and whole person. That person that caused it, they're just a pawn in the game. It came through them because they made the choice to be messengers of bad. But he said it's like, if somebody is, he gave me the example with a dog. He said if somebody is hurting a dog with a stick, the dog is upset at the stick. 1 second later, you're going to start petting the dog. The dog is happy with you. He's not upset because you don't have the stick anymore, right? He's upset at the stick. When somebody causes pain to us, we are in essence upset at the stick, because somebody else, if we believe in a higher power, obviously, if somebody lives life without believing in a higher power, without believing that things happen for a reason, then this exercise
doesn't work, right?
Doesn't work. But if you believe in a higher power, and you believe that you're here for a reason, and that we're going through this process and we're growing and enriching ourselves, everything that happens is an opportunity to see how we react if we react poorly, now we need to work harder to attain that growth.
Right.
Right?
Right.
If we follow through well, then we pass this. We grew. We built a little more muscle.
Right. So definitely, first of all, this does definitely depend on understanding there's a higher power, not only that exists, but that runs the world.
Yes.
Right. Right. Because
Yes.
you need both of those.
And he has both
as
of
a
those.
fundamental belief. Yes.
Yes.
So, and so then that's the question is, why are we going through those things? Because that's where you could get mad at God.
Yes.
It's okay, fine, the stick, whatevs. But there's a person holding the stick, and that's who I'm mad at, and that's God, right? So if that person, the person who did the thing, they got to choose if they're going to be for good or for bad, and could have happened to anybody. But God is the one who sent it towards me, and
That's
so
right.
now I'm mad at God, right?
That's right. And I think that sometimes, I don't know, I find it better when I am mad at God and I have my conversations, and sometimes they're not pretty, because it's much easier to tell God you're mad at God than it is to approach somebody and say, I'm mad at you face to face.
Yes, it is.
When you're telling the air, I'm
Right.
mad at you. It's easier, you have more guts. But so
That's a gift that Jews have, that not every religion has, is that we can be mad at God.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know about other religions.
Not everybody has that opportunity. A lot of people would be told that they should not be mad at God. How can you second guess God? How can you be mad at God? And that's one of the nice things about the book of Jonah, just going back to that, is that Jonah was really mad at God. And it talks about that conversation. God's still doing what he's doing, but Jonah's pretty mad, and he yells at God a few times in the book, a few times. So there's really an example of a prophet of God who's mad at God, yelling at God, and still in a relationship with God. And that's important to understand, that anger towards someone can be part of the whole relationship, right? So we can still be in relationship with God. In fact, it would be almost impossible to have a real relationship with somebody for your entire lifetime and never be mad at them.
Right.
So if you're never mad at God, it probably means you don't fully believe that God runs the world, because there are times to turn to God and say, I'm mad. After that, then you can turn back to yourself and say, okay, fine. Then there's the self-talk that has to come in, where you say, okay, fine. Like, first you have to say, I don't know what you were thinking, to God. I don't know what God was thinking that he allowed whatever, right? That young father to get cancer. Like, it's a mother with a lot of children, and the father is the breadwinner. And what was God thinking to take away a 38-year-old father, right? But we know God is thinking, we can't really use that word toward God, but God is thinking. We don't know what God's thinking, but we do know that God is thinking, and that God has a plan. So that can be helpful to move back a little bit and say, okay, it's not about this person. This person was just the conduit for God's plan at this time, as your husband would say. And then also not to see it as small as it's a test, do we pass or not pass, but that it's a workshop. I prefer to see it as a workshop, right? That God is calling us forth, saying, okay, I'm going to put you in a situation that's a little difficult and or a lot difficult, because I see latent potential and I want to make it not latent. Let's make it actualized potential. Let's bring it out. Let's strengthen you. Let's grow you. Let's harden you a little bit, but strengthen you through this process of whatever I'm about to put you through. So that's a whole philosophy on tests, but that can help with the forgiveness. Once you realize, okay, God chose that exact mother, and that exact mother-in-law, and that exact neighbor, and that exact boss, and that exact in-law child. They were chosen for me. And God doesn't make mistakes with the matches that he makes. Sometimes they're lifetime matches, and sometimes they're part-time matches. But God makes the matches. Even the lady on the airport security who treats you bad, God made that match in that moment for that, whatever it is, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 4 hours of her delaying you. That was a match God made. So So that can help when you put it back on God and take it off the person. Like, I don't know what you did to have to be the bearer of negativity in the world, but that's between you and God. Between me and God is handling this situation, and I don't have to put you in it. I don't. So that's how you can preempt the need to forgive, because you choose not to be mad at that person in the first place. If you
Okay.
can.
So now I have a question. Somebody is angry at someone in their lives for a very long time. It is part of the fabric of their being, that hate, that pain, their agony. They don't even know how to be without that feeling. How do they start and continuously forgive? Like, how do they recommit to letting go on a daily basis, multiple times?
Right. I think that's going to be a real process. If something's really got ingrained, it's really a long-term, it's a parent or an in-law, somebody for decades, or whatever it is, somebody for decades. And it really is part of the fabric of a person's being. It doesn't mean that that thread can't be pulled. The thread can be pulled out of the fabric, but it's going to take some work. So a person like that might need some professional help, or might need some outside help, even if it's not professional. Might need a friend or a book. There's writing exercises. And even between you and yourself, or you and God, there can be writing exercises that are really helpful. So usually, in general, we do the best we can with the tools we have. And if we've done our best with the tools we have and we're not where we want to be, we need to add a tool. So that could be a person, a podcast, a book. So there are books on Amazon that you can go about grief and mourning and letting go and release. And they'll have writing prompts, and you can write it out. Like, what, and you want to think through. Like, that's why I opened with the eggs. Like, what are the eggs here for me? Because I have definitely mixed them into my life, and I don't really want to let them go. So it might take some working to really dig down into how is this serving me? How am I safe in this place of pain? And do I actually want to go somewhere else? And then there's a step-by-step process, but it will take some time for that ingrained, very difficult release to happen, so that you could pull that thread from the fabric of your being. It's possible, but it takes work.
When we were talking about doing this show, and you sent me a TEDx talk from this lady whose eh, father and brother were killed by a neighbor, and how she couldn't forgive them. Her life was defined by how this person changed her life, and how she was upset until the time that she decided to go in and understand what it means to forgive, and how she could forgive um, something pretty horrendous.
The
Because,
murder of her father and brother.
yeah, I wanted to touch on that because a lot of people who are going to watch this show is going to say, but what I went through is different, because our pain is the biggest pain. There's no comparison, right? We can never compare pains. The pain that we feel right now at this very moment, that's the strongest pain that there is. And we tend to explain the fact that other people cannot understand our pain, right? We say, you cannot understand my pain. If you weren't in my shoes, you don't understand my pain. And if you don't understand my pain, you can't tell me what to do and how. You can't tell me that I could follow ABC and do it.
Nope.
And the examples that we were talking about, they are mundane. Listen, that conversation that man had with my husband, it didn't affect my relationship with my husband. I was just insulted because I couldn't believe, because I'm such a protective of marriage, that I couldn't believe that a man would say that to another man who's married. Like, I couldn't comprehend it. But it's not a catastrophic thing, right? It's something that you think about, like, why can't you forgive him? Like, it really, at the end of the day, it didn't affect your marriage. What happens when somebody cheats? What happens when somebody, murders and affects your life in catastrophic ways? Horrific things. is telling them forgiveness is the biggest gift you can give yourself, could that be bullying them? Or
You can't tell them that. They have to ask for it. So when they say, how could I possibly, if somebody comes to you and says, how can I get through this? How can I get past this? Then you might be able to say, have you considered forgiving? But to go to somebody else and say, you need to forgive is never something that we can do. But we could answer a question. And we could sometimes help somebody ask that question. But we could never give advice like that. But we can ask questions. And we can ask questions to draw somebody forward. But it's true, nobody can understand somebody else's pain. And that actually is the value of that TED Talk. I do recommend it. I forgot her name, Sarah Montana, is that her name?
I will put the link in the Heal with
An
Gold.
amazing TED Talk and worth listening to. I mean, she has very good things to say there. But one of the gifts of the TED Talk is that her situation is so extreme that most of us have less to forgive than that. But even if we have a lot to forgive, so it still shows a pathway forward that it's possible. Now, what's important to understand is it actually doesn't matter who can understand your pain, because you're the only one that matters in terms of your pain. The trick is that we often don't understand our own pain. And we often don't understand that we hold the key to open the door to step out of that pain. We do. We hold it. So there's also a great, and the end of the book, The Choice by Edith Edgar.
Yeah.
She also talks about forgiving the Nazis for what they did to her and her family. Not that she can forgive and forget. There's no forget here.
And there is no absolution.
There's no absolution. You do not have to actually absolve them of the crime. It's a release of you from entanglement with them. That's what this kind of forgiveness can be. And it's totally up to us to do that. It has nothing to do with them saying sorry or asking for forgiveness. It has everything to do with us. We hold the keys to that release. Nobody else does. Nobody else can. Nobody could give it to us. Only we can take it for ourselves, and we have it. It's in our pocket. Might have to look for it, but we have it. So that's up to us. Can we share that with somebody? We can in something like this. Somebody who's listening can say, well, I don't know. I'm not sure. I don't think I can. But I would never go to that person and say, what you really need to do is forgive. Like a chutzpah to say that to anybody ever. We should never say that. But you could say, I listened to an amazing conversation. I think you might be interested. Okay, that you could maybe do. And then if the person could say, what do you think I should forgive? You could say, I don't know. How would you feel if you forgave? Would that be helpful to you? Right? So then, yeah.
Exactly. And I think it goes back to something that I always say, and it's in everywhere, my WhatsApp status, I write everywhere, joy is a choice. And it's a choice that you have to make every day anew. And you wake up in the morning and you have to choose, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? I mean, I ask myself that question a million times during the day. And I think that just answering this question guides me through a lot of the decisions that I have to do it on a daily basis.
Right. I mean, I'll ask that question in just one other way to add to that, because it's a beautiful way to ask the question, do I want to be right or do I want to be happy? But you can also ask yourself, let's just say you're that person with the, God forbid, with the murdered father and brother, right? You can say, it's enough. I lost my father and brother. I also have to give this person the rest of my life. It's enough. This person borrowed my gown for her wedding and she got a stain on it and returned it to me like that. I also have to lose the relationship. I could just forgive it. It's enough that I don't have the dress, but I don't want to lose the friendship. So it's enough that I missed the flight, but I don't have to also lose my equanimity. Enough whatever. So that's you do. It's the opposite of choose joy. Would you rather be right or rather be happy? So choose it, but you get to choose how much you want to give up when something bad happens. So you might just give up what was actually taken and not give anything more. That's our choice too.
So how is your commitment to pre-forgiving working?
It's actually working really well. Sometimes I have to remind myself when something happens, and I just have to remind myself, look, and I just try to give it again as a merit back. I'll just say, Hashem, please, okay, I'm going to work on this. God, I'm going to work on forgiving this person for the thing that they said. And please take that and protect the Jewish people in Israel with that. Please protect them. Like, help that be part of the, they have the, what is that called? The Iron Dome.
Mm-hmm.
Let's be the prayer dome that helps, part of the prayer dome and the merit dome that helps protect.
I love the concept of doing it in the merit of, I think it gives more meaning. Miriam passed away, and I decided, and I was going to do this 10 interviews anyway. But then I said, but I could do it in her merit. Now it's so much better. Now I feel that those are not just shows. Those are, in a way, prayers. Those are I'm doing. And she was somebody who cared so much about people's healings. And her whole world, her whole life was about helping people towards their healing journey. So it became more and bigger than just a show. It became a prayer.
Right. So that can help reinforce your commitment. When you say, I'm doing this in the merit of the recovery of somebody or the healing of somebody, the protection of somebody, the whatever it is, in the merit of something, it can just help you say, okay, this is really hard for me, but it's not just for me, it's for them too. I know it's the right thing to do. So I forgive, I release. I don't even have to hold on to that. Whatever they said, it doesn't have to matter at all. Just like water off a duck's back. Sometimes I just imagine a duck and the water rolling off. That's how these words are.
Yes, I believe that if the world concentrated on working on that, we would have had some less illness, less death, less depression, because so much of this anger is transforming into the worst kinds of poison inside our bodies. With all these cancers that we have, I believe that we're eating ourselves from inside with pain that's been accumulated. And if we just visualize that, visualize our health, visualize that when we let go, the flow of all the good things in our body can happen because they are not stopped by those barriers of negativity.
100%. It improves here's from a Mayo Clinic article. So this is about health, right? Mayo Clinic. Okay, what are the benefits of forgiving someone? Healthier relationships, improved mental health, less anxiety, stress and hostility, lower blood pressure, fewer symptoms of depression, stronger immune system, improved heart health, and improved self-esteem. So that's the Mayo Clinic list of the benefits of forgiveness. And that doesn't even include not going to sleep with the person you don't want to be with.
I love that. Aliza, I could stay with you for hours, but I want to respect everybody who is here. If anybody has a question, you have a second to ask it. But Aliza is in the group, and if not, I can always forward any questions that you may have. If you're watching on replay, you can ask the questions, and I will definitely reach out to Aliza to get the answers. Ask all the questions and answers are inside the Heal with Gold group. I don't really go to YouTube to answer. So if you're watching on replay on YouTube and you have a question, please head to Heal with Gold in order for me to answer your questions. Aliza, thank you so much. You are a role model. We need more women like that, strong women that have what to say, and that the love and the kindness that you chose to share with the world is seen and felt. And I know for a fact that all of that you're doing in the merit of the safety of people in Israel and really everywhere, because you're just somebody who loves humanity to such an extent, and your ability to just see people just for being people and love everybody equally always amazes me, the kind of person. And please go Google Aliza. She has so many lectures and podcasts. Matana did an amazing podcast, I believe even two with Aliza, which were amazing. So go watch them. Her show is Hope to Recharge. There's no competition here. We're all one big family, and we love to share all the goodness. So go and watch it. Thank you, everybody, for here. Next week, we have Fally Klein. We're going to be talking about time and how time can help heal wounds. What does it mean, time? What do you do with the time? And obviously, I have some kintsugi messages about time. So don't miss it. And I'll see you next week. Aliza, thank you so much.
Bye.
Mhm.